Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja
Jaya Radha
Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srila Sadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shamakund Radhakund Giri Govardhan Ki Jai. Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. Navadvip Dham Ki Jai. Mathura Dham Ki Jai. Bhakti Devi Ki Jai. Tulasi Devi Ki Jai. Yamuna Maya Ki Jai. Maya Ki Jai. Samaveta Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Guru and Gauranga. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 10, verse 49 to 50. Shatuhu Kosharavahe Tasya Samvadaha Adhyatma Samshritaha Yat Va Saha Bhagavan Tasmai Prishtaha Tattvam uvacha ha bruhi naha tat idam somya vidurasya vicheshtitam bandhu tyaga nimitam cha yata eva agatavan punaha shatukosharavishtasya samvado dhyatma samshritaha yadvasa bhagavams tasmai prishtas tattvam uvachaha shatukosharavishtasya samvado dhyatma samshritaha yadvasa bhagavams tasmai prishtas tattvam uvachaha shatukosharavishtasya samvado dhyatma samshritaha yadvasa bhagavams tasmai prishtas tattvam uvachaha shatukosharavishtasya
samvado dhyatma samshritaha
samvado dhyatma samshritaha
yadvasa bhagavams tasmai prishtas tattvam uvachaha
prishtas tattvam uvachaha
Shatukosharavishtasya
shatukosharavishtasya
samvado dhyatma samshritaha yadvasa bhagavams tasmai prishtas tattvam uvachaha
prishtas tattvam uvachaha
Shatukosharavishtasya samvado dhyatma samshritaha yadvasa bhagavams tasmai prishtas tattvam uvachaha
Shatukosharavishtasya samvaradyat samshritaha yadvasa bhagavams tasmai prishtas tattvam uvachaha
Shatukosharavishtasya samvado dhyatma samshritaha yadvasa bhagavams tasmai prishtas tattvam uvachaha
And the next part is Bruhi nastad idam somya vidurasya vicheshtitam bandhu tyaga nimittam cha yataiva gatavan punaha Shratuhu avidura kosharavehe as that of Maitreya. Tasya, there. Samvadaha, news. Adhyatma, in the matter of transcendental knowledge. Samshritaha, full of. Yat, which. Va, anything else. Saha, he, Bhagavan, his grace, Tasmai, unto him, Prishtaha, inquired, Tattvam, the truth, Uvacha, answered, Ha, in the past, Bruhi, please tell, Naha, unto us, Tat, those matters, Idam, here, Somya, O gentle one, Vidurasya, of Vidura, Vicheshtitam, activities, Bandhutyaga, renouncing the friends, Nimittam, the cause of, Cha, also, Yata, as, Eva, also, Agatavan, came back, Punaha, again, at home. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Shonaka Rishi said, let us know, please, what topics were discussed between Vidura. Why does this keep going up and down on the volume? It's just like malfunctioning or something. I think it's just this particular mic. Shonaka Rishi said, let us know, please, what topics were discussed between Vidura and Maitreya, who talked on transcendental subjects, and what was inquired by Vidura and replied by Maitreya. Also, please let us know the reason for Vidura's giving up the connection of his family members, and why he again came home. Please also let us know the activities of Vidura while he was in the places of pilgrimage. Purport. Sri Sutta Goswami was narrating the topics of the creation and destruction of the material world, but it appears that the rishis headed by Shonaka were more inclined to hear of transcendental subjects, which are on a higher level than the physical. There are two classes of men, namely those too addicted to the gross body and the material world, and others on the higher level who are interested more in transcendental knowledge. Srimad Bhagavatam gives facility to everyone, both to the materialists and to the transcendentalists. By hearing Srimad Bhagavatam in the matter of the Lord's glorious activities, both in the material world and in the transcendental world, men can derive equal benefit. The materialists are more interested in the physical laws and how they are acting, and they see wonders in those physical glamours. Sometimes, due to physical glamours, they forget the glories of the Lord. They should know definitely that physical activities and their wonders are all initiated by the Lord. The rose in the garden gradually takes its shape and color to become beautiful and sweet, not by a blind physical law, although it appears like that. Behind that physical law is the direction of the complete consciousness of the Supreme Lord. Otherwise, things cannot take shape so systematically. This example is really amazing that comes up here. The artist draws a picture of a rose very nicely, with all attention and artistic sense. And yet it does not become as perfect as the real rose. If that is the real fact, how can we say that the real rose has taken its shape without intelligence behind the beauty? This sort of conclusion is due to a poor fund of knowledge. One must know from the above description of creation and annihilation that the Supreme Consciousness, being omnipresent, can take care of everything with perfect attention. That is the fact of the omnipresence of the Supreme Lord. Persons still more foolish than the gross materialist, however, claim to be transcendentalist and claim to have such supreme all-pervading consciousness, but offer no proof. Such foolish persons cannot know what is going on behind the next wall, yet they are falsely proud of possessing the cosmic, all-pervading consciousness of the Supreme Person. For them also, hearing of Srimad Bhagavatam is a great help. It will open their eyes to see that simply by claiming supreme consciousness, one does not become supremely conscious. One has to prove in the physical world that he has such supreme consciousness. The rishis of Naimisharanya, however, were above the gross materialists and the false transcendentalists, and thus they were always anxious to know the real truth in transcendental matters as discussed by authorities. Maharaj, would you like to speak on this verse?
the rose is a very nice example. And it's common sense that if it takes intelligence just to draw a facsimile of the rose, then it must take intelligence to produce the original rose. And therefore, the original artist must be considered superior to the secondary artists. If we give awards to the secondary artists, there should also be awards given to the original artist, who painted it in three-dimensional with fragrances and reproductive faculties and so many different aspects. It acts as food for some other species, so many things that the secondary rose cannot do. So it seems quite arrogant to not give credit, or just foolish, not give credit to the one who's behind. If they say we don't see him, that it makes the argument even. It's like saying in court, they're having a court case, and so someone says, discussing a person who was evidently killed by some gunshot, and so one person would say, well, I didn't see him get shot by. How can I assume that he? Well, there's so many things that are evidence. It may not be directly perceived, but in court they also consider that if it's indirectly proven, then although there still may be some doubt on some people's minds, but in this case, doubt can't be maintained because one can see the Lord who made the flower and who's making the flowers now. That removes that argument, because someone may say, I don't see him, no one's ever seen him, and so therefore we cannot accept that there is such a thing as God. But what if he can be seen? What if he can be associated with, he can be heard, he can be interacted with, all these things. And he has been. Then they say things like, if anyone's ever seen God, then they'll become blind. You heard that? Why? Why blind? Actually, anyone who ever sees God, he's able to see. That's the real beginning of real seeing. To see the Lord in his world, his transcendental world. They may not be able to see him. That doesn't mean that no one can see him. There are many examples. Narad Muni has seen him. Vidura has seen the Lord. And they're still living, and they're still seeing. Now if you say, well, we don't accept, and Vyasadeva also saw, Vyasadeva is the compiler of the Vedas, he also saw Krishna. He had him come to his house. Vyasadeva's wife saw Krishna. Krishna spoke to their son in the womb. He did amazing things. He said, well, then how can he be God if he's an ordinary man? He's not an ordinary man. He does amazing things. So on one hand they say that he can't exist because no one's ever seen him. Then when people say, oh, I saw him do this, I saw him lift the mountain, I saw him lift the mountain. And all these evidences are there, all these eyewitnesses. Then they don't accept those eyewitnesses. But why shouldn't they be accepted? Well, it's too long ago. We need more recent evidence. Well, even if they want recent evidence, it's available, but one has to then have the access to go where such recent evidence is available. The Lord has His abode, and one can go to His abode. Or even the demigods. The demigods who are in charge of different important parts of this universe, they also have access to go when it's required to visit the Lord. In this universe, Dweep, they can go, the pole star, and visit with the Lord, and they say what's on their mind, they take care of their business because they're taking care of the Lord's business in the material world for Him. They're servants. It's like Bhumi, she was feeling overburdened, the earth. Earth personified was feeling overburdened by the presence of so many demons. So she wanted some help, mercy from her higher-ups, and that means Brahma. And Brahma went with her, and the other demigods also went, and they requested Krishna to please, or Vishnu, in this sense, Kshirodakashayi Vishnu, to please come and help them, or somehow do something. And he said, yes, I'm coming soon, I'll be appearing, and demigods should also come with me, and they should take their birth in the family of the Yadu dynasty. And so they followed that instruction. They have that power. They can go where they want to go on the order of the Lord. And then the whole story unfolds, how they came, how they took different positions as Krishna's father, Krishna's grandfather. And the Lord comes in an amazing story, the greatest story ever told. But then they have no faith. Then when they hear that, they say, I can't have any faith in that. So that's their fault then. Then they have to take the credit for being faithless and foolish. Because Krishna calls them mudhas. Avajananti mam mudha manushim tanamashtam param bhavam vajananto mama bhaktu maheshwaram. Fools deride me when I descend in the form of a human. They think that they do not know my transcendental nature, my supreme dominion over all that be. They don't understand how great God is. He can appear like an ordinary person, but do things that are beyond the capacity of an ordinary person. So they're unfortunate, without a doubt, those who cannot appreciate the proof that's given every day, every moment of God's existence. If that type of evidence doesn't make any sense to them, then you have to ask, well, what does then? If you see you believe what you read in the newspaper, or you believe what you see on the internet, and they say, well, I don't believe all of the things. I may believe some of the things. Okay, so what is your standard of proof, acceptance of proof? And that is given. We have the greatest personalities that are still existing. We're discussing parampara. Parampara is still existing because Brahma, who is the first student of Lord Krishna in the disciplic succession, He's still living. He's not dead. Vyasadeva is still living. These persons, some of them are still in their same bodies. So, then they say, well, then why don't we go see Brahma? Yes, if you're qualified, you can go and see Brahma. You can talk to Brahma. You don't even have to go in your physical body. One who's very advanced, he can go in his subtle form. As we see, Narada Muni travels all around the universe. So to ignore the whole spiritual realm is to really miss out on the most important thing in life, is the spiritual realm. The material realm also has its value, there's no doubt. It's like the prison department. It has its value. But the real thing is not when your children grow up, say, now you're going to get to go to the prison. No, that's not a very desirable thing. So, we should prepare the children for going back to home, back to Godhead, as we spoke last night to many with children. And by bringing their children there, or at least by coming there themselves, they showed that they were interested in trying to be perfect parents. Real parents are those who deliver their children from the cycle of birth and death. So that's a positive thing, and we should encourage more and more people to raise their children as devotees of the Lord, then they'll be successful.
Thank you, Maharaj. Om Agyana Timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Mano Bhishtam Shrapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Parakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagarjatam Sahagana Raghunathan Vitam Tam Sujivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Prijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Rishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Haripriye Pancha Kalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prashtaya Bhutale Srimate Dhanavirga Swami Niti Namine Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prashtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pashyachadi Sutarine Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangam Langayate Garim Yat Kripa Tadaham Vande Shri Gurum Dinatarinam Bhagisha Yasha Vadane Lakshmir Yasha Chavakshasi Yasyaste Hridaye Samvit Tam Nirsimham Maham Bhaje. Srila Prabhupada gives the example that many people ask, can you show me God? And he gives the example that we say, yes, we can. He says, yes, we can show you God. I am also seeing God. And then he explains what is the qualification for seeing God. And he says that just like a mechanic, if someone's car breaks down, they look at the car and nothing happens, it's broken. But they bring it to someone who's qualified, they bring it to the mechanic, and immediately he touches some part and it runs. So if this qualification, what's the difference there? Is that one person was qualified to see the vehicle properly. And so if such qualification is needed just for something as simple or mundane as a vehicle, then what to speak of the person who's creating all the different vehicles in this world, of all these different bodies and this whole machine of material nature. The qualification has to be there to see him. And we were hearing in the verse that Vidura and Maitreya, Shonika Rishi was asking what topics were discussed by Vidura and Maitreya. So, who spoke on transcendental subjects, and what was inquired by Vidura and replied by Maitreya. So these rishis at Naimisharanya were very anxious to know about this, because they wanted to hear what Vidura and Maitreya ask and speak about, because when two devotees come together, they speak about Krishna. And we see that in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 10, text 1. The Supreme Lord said, "My dear friend, mighty armed Arjuna, listen again to my supreme word, which I shall impart to you for your benefit, and which will give you great joy." And in the purport, Srila Prabhupada explains that we have to hear about Krishna. He says, the more one hears about the Supreme God, the more one becomes fixed in devotional service. So that's how, if we're ever feeling a lack of spiritual consciousness or enthusiasm, or not being fixed in devotional service, he tells us how. We have to hear about the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The more one hears about Krishna, the more one becomes fixed in devotional service. And then Srila Prabhupada goes on to explain, one should always hear about the Lord in the association of devotees. That will enhance one's devotional service. Discourses, so now we're hearing what's the qualification for hearing about Krishna, or how to do it. One should always hear about the Lord in association of devotees, and that will enhance one's devotional service. Discourses in the society of devotees can take place only among those who are really anxious to be in Krishna consciousness. So we might wonder, well, why do I not hear about Krishna so much? Or why do I not speak about Krishna so much? Or even if I'm around devotees, why do I not hear about Krishna so much or speak about Krishna so much? Well, we see Srila Prabhupada gives the qualification that the discourses about Krishna can only take place among those who are really anxious to be in Krishna consciousness. And we see that was the qualification of these rishis of Naimisharanya. He said in the last sentence of the purport, the rishis of Naimisharanya, however, were above the gross materialist and the false transcendentalist, and thus they were always anxious to know the real truth in transcendental matters, as discussed by authorities. So we were hearing earlier in the Srimad Bhagavatam, Krishna was speaking to Brahma about one who's anxious to hear the real truth. Hopefully I could find it. But he was explaining that one who's searching out the absolute truth must inquire up to, sorry, the mic keeps getting louder, must inquire up to this point. Does anyone remember what this point was? One who's searching for the absolute truth, they must inquire up to this point. Any guesses? Here it is. We read, this is part of the Chatush Shloki. Etavad eva jigyasyam tatva sunat manaha av anvaya vyatire kabyam yatsyat sarvada. A person who is searching after the supreme absolute truth, the personality of Godhead, most certain, it's supposed to be must, this book has it printed as most. A person who is searching after the supreme absolute truth, the personality of Godhead, must certainly search for it up to this, in all circumstances, in all space and time, and both directly and indirectly. So what must they inquire into if they're looking for the absolute truth? Love of God. That's what it is. So when looking for the perfection of life, they must actually inquire up to this point, the point of love of God. So in if we look at like the modern religious practices of today, they mostly, it's sinful to even be celibate or to try to control the senses. It's seen as like a sin because the whole purpose is to enjoy life, enjoy your senses, enjoy yourself as much as you can. That's the goal. So there's some, and then if you do some fasting or these different practices, that's all good, but the end goal is to enjoy your senses, your life, your body.
in this lifetime. So we see there's some artha, economic development, some idea of getting wealth. There's some like perverted type of dharma, religious process, and then the main thing is the kama, sense gratification. But if anyone even takes a glance at the Vedas, they'll see that mukti is also, or moksha is also needed. That there's dharma, artha, kama, and moksha. So there's dharma, some religion, some pious activities. There's artha, economic development or wealth. There's kama, sense gratification, and then there's moksha, liberation. These are described as the goals of life. But then Lord Chaitanya shows that there's an even higher goal, prema maharta mahan, prema pumarta mahan, the goal of love of Godhead. So that's what these rishis of Naimisharanya are interested in. And that's the conclusion that anyone who's searching for the perfection of life should search out, to how to actually develop one's love of Godhead. And we are hearing the way to do that is by hearing about Krishna, by hearing about him, and then one develops their attraction for him. So that's why they're so anxious to hear the discussion between these two devotees. And Srila Prabhupada also mentions in that example about the qualification to see God with that mechanic and everything. Later in that class, he explains that the qualification is that one must be very eager to hear God, or very eager or very anxious about knowing the real truth, about knowing Krishna. So that's if that qualification is there, then we can very anxiously and eagerly hear the transcendental topics of the Lord in the association of devotees, and in that way develop this love of God. So Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur explained that one should be engaged in Hare Katha 24 hours a day. So that means they can be chanting their japa, but we see, or chanting kirtan, but he also wasn't always singing kirtans, but we see he was speaking about Krishna so much all of the time. He would give discourses for 4 or 5 hours a day, speaking Krishna Katha. And in this way, he was always, even from a young age, benefiting all living entities by always engaging in Hare Katha. And he said, even when eating and sleeping, one should be constantly engaged in Hare Katha. And he explained that he was thinking about this, how one should always be engaged in preaching Krishna consciousness, and he thought, well, to do that I might have to associate with so many materialists to be preaching all the time. But he said, by the grace of Krishna, I'm actually blessed to have so many people around me who have given up sinful activities and have taken interest in hearing about Krishna. So I can always be speaking Hare Katha. And in that way, that's how one actually develops love of God, is by hearing and chanting about Krishna. So it should go on at all times. Are there any comments or questions? Okay. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.